April 9th, the trapped politician. Luke chapter 23 verses 1 to 5 and 13 to 25. Then the whole company of them arose and brought Jesus before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ, a king." And Pilate asked him, "Are you king of the Jews?" And he answered him, "You have said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I find no guilt in this man." But they were urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea, from Galilee even to this place." Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers of the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people. After examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him, neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish him and release him." But they all cried out together, "Away with this man and release to us Barabbas, a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city, and for murder." Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus, but they kept shouting, "Crucify, crucify him!" A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I have found in him no guilt deserving death. I will therefore punish and release him." But they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, for whom they asked, but he delivered Jesus over to their will. The expression 15 minutes of fame is said to have been inspired by the words appearing in a program for an exhibition of the works of Andy Warhol in Stockholm in 1968. The photographer Nat Finkelstein claimed he was their originator. As a crowd gathered around Warhol, Finkelstein responded to his comment that everybody wanted to be famous. "Yeah, for about 15 minutes, Andy." If Pontius Pilate ever craved fame, and presumably, as Roman governor, he had some streak of ambition, he has certainly achieved it, and for more than 15 minutes. Now, every Sunday, Christians all over the world say in unison the words of the Apostles' Creed, "Jesus Christ suffered under Pontius Pilate." Picture the scene. Passover is a nerve-wracking enough week for the governor Pilate. Jerusalem is flooded with Jews from throughout the empire and beyond. Tensions are high. It is early on Friday morning. Since Pilate fell asleep a few hours before, Jesus of Nazareth has been betrayed, arrested, abused, tried and condemned by the chief priests and the Sanhedrin. Now, mob-like, they're in his courtyard demanding to see him. The Sanhedrin had only limited power over life and death, in extreme cases such as Gentiles entering beyond the outer court of the temple. But carrying out a death sentence for blasphemy, the charge of which they found Jesus guilty, was not in their power. They needed to find a different accusation against Jesus, one that would carry the death sentence: treason. Listen to the words on the charge sheet in verse 2. Misleading our nation, a scarcely veiled claim that he was stirring up rebellion. Forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is a king. Treason indeed. Pilate could be a cunning and indeed a vicious man, but he was no match for these snakes. He was cornered. His worst Passover nightmare was now a reality. Pilate cuts to the chase by asking Jesus directly, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "You have said so," Jesus replies. John's Gospel indicates that the interrogation was more extensive than this. To his credit, Pilate reaches a decisive verdict. Jesus is not guilty. But then he plays his get-out-of-jail-free card. Jesus is a Galilean. Galilee is Herod's jurisdiction, so Pilate can shift responsibility. But before long, Jesus is back. Pilate again delivers the same verdict. But now he has devised a compromise which he offers: a physical scourging instead of a death sentence. But faced with Jewish religious leaders demanding that the release of an insurrectionist called Barabbas and the crucifixion of Jesus, Pilate wilts, despite having all the authority of the Roman Empire behind him. He sets a murderer free and has Jesus sent off for crucifixion. So much for justice. Yet woven into this travesty of justice is the evidence of a higher justice. For here, God will show himself to be just and the justifier of those who believe in Jesus. Romans chapter 3 verse 26. For how can we who are guilty be declared righteous in his sight? Only if Jesus in his incarnation becomes one with us as humans and a substitute for us as sinners in his crucifixion. He has come to take our place and be counted as guilty in our place. And so, within this single chapter of Luke's Gospel, Jesus is declared to be not guilty by Pilate, then by Herod, then by one of the dying criminals at his side, and finally, as we shall see later, by the very man who was in charge of his execution. And yet he is still condemned. The innocent one is treated as the guilty one, in order that the guilty ones may be treated as righteous ones. This is the heart of the gospel. Today's reflection. Imagine you were the one being released from Pilate's prison. What would you resolve to do next? For the rest of his life, Barabbas could say, Jesus died instead of me. But the Christian can say, in a much deeper sense, the Son of God loved me and gave himself for me, and so the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith. Galatians chapter 2 verse 20.
This devotional series is being produced with the kind permission of the Good Book Company. A link to the book To Seek and to Save by Sinclair Ferguson can be found in the description below.